Well, Dr. Aung San Suu Kyi, during her conversation with David Cameron, said, another vital aspect that you need to hold discussions with is the opposition of the country.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about the Sri Lankan opposition.
We have to.
Well, we have to, because we have the government who's going to get a lot of attention during the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, and we have the opposition too. Any country, a democratic country, needs an opposition.
Yeah.
And I think it is important to talk about the opposition in that sense. So, the opposition too is in a bit of a crisis. Not in a bit of a crisis, but in a huge crisis. We saw recently what played out on the television, and now we see religious leaders, like, for instance, the United Bhikkhu Front, a very strong part of the United National Party, calling for a change in the party. And it has put forward certain proposals, and it is waiting for those proposals to be accepted. The countdown is ticking, and what do you think should be done right now for the opposition? What should the opposition really do? I mean, the United Bhikkhu Front, with several leading monks in its group, are calling for a change in the leadership of the United National Party. Do you think there will be some sort of acceptance of these proposals, or do you think it's just going to be, again, just proposals on the table?
I don't think we have to speculate, because there's it's all there in the Sunday Times, Colombo, the main political column. Your station actually had Venerable Girambe Anandathero of Anuradhapura, whom I had the great privilege of knowing from 97, a very revered, benign monk. And he said on camera, he said that he believes the promise given by the leader of the United National Party, that power will be transferred, all the leadership functions will be transferred to this council, the leadership council. Basically, all power will be devolved as per the agreement. And that's what he said, the Reverend monk. Now, Mr. Wickramasinghe has told the Sunday Times that he never said any such thing to anyone. So the viewers and all of us are on the horns of a painful dilemma. Do we believe Venerable Girambe Anandathero, or do we believe Mr. Ranil Wickramasinghe? Now, I don't know. I mean, let the viewers take their pick. Now, what I do know, however, is this, and maybe Mr. David Cameron should be introduced to Mr. Wickramasinghe, because it's a chance of a lifetime. It's a chance of a lifetime. Mr. Wickramasinghe is the longest serving opposition leader, I believe, in the history of democratic politics in the world. Next year, 1994, the UNP would have been in opposition for 20 years. That's...
You mean in 2014?
From 1994 to 2014. And Mr. Wickramasinghe would have been the leader of the opposition for 20 years. Now it's 19 and counting. That doesn't happen anywhere in the world. The Australian Labour Party lost the election, and within days it had a new leader and a new deputy leader. There are political parties that lose their status, like the Liberal Party in Britain, but then those are replaced by another party. It was replaced by the Labour Party. But nowhere in the world, in democratic politics, do you have a party that stays 20 years in opposition and is not supplanted by another opposition party, and keeps the same leader as the leader of the opposition for those 20 years. Now, there are those who say, but is it the fault of Mr. Wickramasinghe? Well, I really don't know, Mahina. When you have the UNP in opposition for 20 years, Mr. Wickramasinghe's leader of the opposition for 20 years, that's next year in 2014. Well, I think it's quite possible that there's a relationship between these two facts. But if you want to be blind to it, well, that's their business. All I do know is that there are two ways this can go. Either the UNP parliamentary group meets and has a secret ballot as to who the leader and deputy leader should be. And here they should bypass this masked working committee. Nobody knows who's on that. In fact, your station should put the photographs, like you did the Mathura demonstration. Who's on this working committee that decides on all these things? We should know these guys. But the parliamentary group would have to decide, look, are we going to celebrate 20 years in opposition and the leadership of Mr. Wickramasinghe as leader of the opposition in the party for 20 years next year, or do we want to make a change? Now, this is one possibility. The other possibility is that the voters, as they have done for 20 years, will have to take the UNP by its ankles and hold it upside down and shake it during the provincial council elections in the first quarter probably of next year, so that the leadership sort of falls out of the pocket. It's been shaking the UNP now for 20 years until the UNP got the message. It hasn't worked. Now they would have to hold it by the ankles and shake it until the leadership drops. This is the other way to go. There's a huge disconnect between life in the party and life in the country, because Mr. Jayatilleka, who contested the post of national organizer of the UNP in 2011, lost the vote. And 2 years later, he got 300,000 preference votes.
A record number of votes.
A record number, beating a favorite in the province.
Northwestern province.
In the Northwestern province. Now that shows that what's happening in the country, the vote, the national electorate, is very different. It's a different planet from what's going on in this stagnant fish tank that the UNP has become. So
which is out of touch with everything else that is going.
Completely out of touch, completely unrepresentative. They're in a different universe. So somebody within the UNP has to decide whether that's the way they want to stay and go into extinction. Because you can celebrate 20 years in opposition, you can just as well celebrate 25, and it will be the same leader of the opposition.
Well, the last time we spoke, Doctor, you said that the government is completely out of touch with the international community. It doesn't know anything that is, from north upwards. Whereas the UNP or the opposition has a good understanding of what's going on in the world.
I'm not sure that they have a good understanding of that either. But they certainly don't have national understanding of what's going on nationally.
But now we see all the international leaders coming to Sri Lanka for the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. Isn't this a good opportunity for the opposition to, really make its voice heard or to be out there?
Well, I think there are many voices within the opposition. The UNP wanted the Commonwealth to be held, then they wanted the Commonwealth to be boycotted. Now again, they're not sure whether they want it to be boycotted or whether they'll participate. And different members of the UNP will say different things. I mean, I'm sure Mr. Mangala Samarveer will have something interesting to say about the assassination plot by Kotagamini, whoever that might be. Mr. Wickramasinghe will have something to say. I do hope the Commonwealth leaders ask him about his splendid 20 years or 19 plus as leader of the opposition. David Cameron and he belong to the same International Democratic Union. The British Conservatives are the chair. Of course, the British Conservatives have had about 10 different leaders since Mr. Wickramasinghe took his party into that. But anyway, there are more than one party within that UNP. So I don't know what they're really going to tell their Commonwealth counterparts, the interlocutors whom they meet. I mean, it should be fun.
Well, Doctor, this program is not only about talking about political situations in Sri Lanka. We also go over the Indian Ocean. We go to the other countries as well. And let's talk about a topic that's really making the headlines in the international political arena, and that is the spying allegations. We see German Chancellor Angela Merkel making a personal telephone call to US President Barack Obama and stating that the US is spying on her and has been keeping records of her conversations or whatnot, and the NSA is under severe fire. What do you make up out of this recent development, which I think it has been coming to this point? We saw the French president too accusing the US.
Mahina, the United States had a serious problem during the presidency of George W. Bush in terms of its international standing. It recovered because of the Barack Obama presidency. And if it weren't Barack Obama who was the president, right now there would have been a firestorm of protest. The protest is muffled because it happens to be Barack Obama. And because he's shown signs of flexibility, he didn't attack Syria and so on. Yet, there's something very, very seriously wrong. I mean, okay, it's one thing to collect intelligence in order to protect your citizens from terrorist attack. But how does that collection of electronic intelligence somehow entail the monitoring of the telephone conversations of the leaders of countries that are your closest allies? I mean, how does it entail the monitoring of the telephone conversations of leaders anywhere? Anyway, Dilma Rousseff, the president of Brazil, a very important country in Latin America, perhaps the most important, actually protested about this at the UN General Assembly. And this is a loss of prestige for the United States. But bad enough as that was, because one could say, well, this is a left-of-center president who had been an urban guerrilla when she was in her 20s. But what about the conservative administration of Angela Merkel and François Hollande, the president of France? Now France and Germany are making a joint initiative. 70 million telephone calls of British citizens have been monitored within a month by the American National Security Agency. Of British citizens, telephone calls, emails. So you remember the famous work of fiction, the iconic work called 1984 by George Orwell, and its best known line was, "Big Brother is watching you." Well, obviously Big Brother is listening, and Big Brother is reading your emails. It's a zany